Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by the son of Delaware? Yeah, maybe not. So, I've been looking forward all week, or, for the greater part of the week. I realize that it's now the end of the week. Um, for all of those who've come to hold our departing president, Donald J. Trump, in great regard, despite his faults, or perhaps because of them, as they cemented his commonality with the ordinary voters, whatever the case. But now we can all take off the tinfoil hat and realize that there never was a plan. Oh, yeah, there was a plan of sorts. Trump relied upon the constitutional rule of law, which he espoused since day one, and availed himself of every legal artifice at his command. He supported the Constitution, and he used the Constitution. However, as we all know, he was not defeated by the Constitution. And that's a fact. We saw what happened in plain sight, despite the fact that the news media was complicit in the naughty goings on, and we've been told that we should just accept that. It's kind of annoying. I don't like it when people piss down my neck without even the courtesy of calling it rain, as the saying goes. So, yeah, there you go with that. Anyway, although it may have been legal to take other rather extreme actions, he chose not to subject the nation to those extremities. We were not in a civil war. We were not faced with widespread open rebellion. And he chose not to counter the constitutional rights of states, where this was arguably present throughout the year. And I think it's very important for us to understand why there was inaction when it seemed like there should have been action. And yes, it is true that the President of the United States could have sent federal troops into states to quell the riots disguised as peaceful protests being performed by BLM and Antifa ideologues, who, of course, are merely an idea, according to Jerry Fat Bastard Nadler. It's kind of, as a quick aside, I wasn't going to say this, but now that there's rioting in the streets again, and it's not the rabid Trump supporters, it's Antifa, and that's now having to be dealt with in the media. But the media are still just calling them protests, despite the fact that they're doing damage and they're hurting people. But it's status quo, I guess. Anyway, to return to that thought. So yeah, there were some naughty goings on in the recent election and the follow-up Senate election, which mirrored the national election. And all those with eyes to see it saw it plainly. Though there were agencies that seek to silence the voices of those who would call it out, and the voices of the literal thousands of sworn affidavits, yeah, we saw it all. We, the people, know the truth of it. After our courts of justice defied their names and refused to hear the evidence, refused to judge the cases duly brought before them on merit, but rather abrogated their responsibilities through either corruption or cowardice, pick one. Our federal legislatures, apparently eager to return to their prior state of feckless insouciance, showed themselves for who they truly are. I would like to thank a few. I would like to thank Matt Gaetz for his strong voice. And I'm not going to name them all because I don't have a list and we don't have the time. But I do want to point out that there were members who remained true to the Republic. And I'd like to, point out people like Josh Hawley specifically, and Ted Cruz, who offered a way out of this issue that had precedent, but no one seemed interested in. I know people go, oh, Ted Cruz, rah, 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 rah. He's actually my senator, and I'm very proud of his actions during this trying time. And it's been very trying because, of course, we had an insurrection. Oh my God, an insurrection, they say. And they keep saying insurrection, insurrection, insurrection. Have you noticed that it seems very important for the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, who are one and the same, that America know what the definition of an insurrection is? Yeah, I think it's also important that America know the definition of sedition and treason. These are three things that I think that we should know the specific definitions of, so that, if we should find ourselves in a circumstance, we can level the correct complaint against those who would oppress us. In any event, the Democrats tell us so, that we had an insurrection. Mainstream media tells us so. The gutless rhinos, eager to suck the sweet teat of corruption's benefits, tell us so, and shed a tear for America because of this insurrection. Insurrection. The violent insurrection. The vulgar display of whiteness. Oh, that's the new one. It's like, oh yeah, we weren't just terrorists. Whoever the we were, because it wasn't Trump supporters. And I count myself to be a supporter of the Trump ideal of what America's government should be doing. But in any event, it's a display of whiteness. And it's kind of also interesting that white supremacy is now multiracial. Okay. So this is one of their statements, like, diversity is our strength. Yeah, I want Stacey Abrams to die a horrible death, gutted in the street, left bleeding, drowning in her own misery and screams. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I don't like the bitch. I don't actually wish her, physical harm. I don't want to go out and, do bad things to her. But I think that between her and her sister, the state of Georgia has got some trash to take out real soon. And I hope that they do that. Yeah, sorry, but I digress. In any event, they say that, oh, well, insurrection at the Capitol, this has never happened before. Or at least before the more recent never happened before of the Kavanaugh hearings, that we're supposed to forget that the Democrat Me Too mob was literally pounding on the Senate chamber doors during the hearings. Where was the cry for insurrection then? Where were the guards to shoot the unarmed protesters, as they burst their way into the building, that had considerably more security on that occasion than on the 6th? Curious. But of course, rules for thee, but not for me. To say that, justice has a double standard in this nation is, pretty much to say, well, it's a redundancy. I mean, we don't even need to point it out. It's just there. The challenge, of course, is making sure that it doesn't stay ingrained in our culture any longer, and our culture is going to have to undergo some change as well. And I'll be speaking about that a little later. Anyway, their narrative mouthpieces all decry the terrible violence of the Trump mob, committing insurrection in his unholy name. I didn't actually see any of that. I did see a video of a BLM guy wandering through the crowd in the Capitol going, "We have to burn this shit down. We have to burn this shit down." More on that later. Anyway, but the only violence that I saw was the shooting death of an unarmed woman. Did violence occur? Yes, violence occurred. Were there some bad actors doing some bad shit? You bet. However, the only video evidence of agitators I've been able to find has been of that BLM Antifa members mixed in with a small crowd of nonviolent and largely confused-looking dumbasses. Um, you know, my absolute favorite image was of this little wizened crone, wandering through the velvet ropes, waving her little flag. It's like, lady, you don't know where the hell you are. And you look at that and it's like, oh, it's a violent insurrection, right? Anyway, unlike the angry mob of just a few years ago, all of them are going to go to jail. Bank on it. You went in, you're going to jail. But for the most part, this is what insurrection looked like that day. Oops, not that one. Made a boo-boo. There we go. This is what insurrection looked like that day. You see what I mean? Note how these insurrectionists were violently and lawfully committing their act of domestic tourism. This is what the Democrats are wailing about and shedding fearful tears in threat of their very lives. Americans shuffling peaceably between the velvet ropes. I mean, really? Yeah, okay. Did they break the law? Yeah, probably in some capacity. Are those folks terrorists? No, but by virtue of how they vote. But of course, if they are convicted of felony charges, they won't be able to vote next time. Problem solved, I guess. Unless you're a Democrat felon, in which case you can still vote in Georgia, as we know that about 3,500 did. It's all right. It's okay. Because it was, for the greater good. Yeah, we're going to hear that a lot. It's that unity thing that they're talking about. Anyway, so of course, Donald Trump, who nearly an hour after the violence began at the Capitol finished his speech, is responsible for this insurrection by inviting his entire audience of 4, 5, 600,000 patriots. It was a bunch of people, guys, to, quote, peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol and let your voices be heard, end quote. That's what he said. And frankly, most people didn't go. It was cold. Trump started late. And it's like a 55 minute walk to the Capitol from the ellipse. And of course, all the streets were closed off. There was only foot traffic available. And yeah, I'm 60 years old. I would have stayed for the speech, but I would have then been looking for some place to sit down, put my feet up, and, have a hot cup of something, So anyway, in point of fact, those that showed up for the speech would have had to have left about 11 minutes into the speech to be able to reach the Capitol in time for the acts of violence that actually did occur. And, let's be realistic. If you went to go and listen to Donald Trump speak, your ass stayed right where it was until he finished. Nobody leaves early from a Trump speech. But, telling people to exercise their First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble and petition their grievances to the government, if you've actually read the entire First Amendment, that's actually, in there too. It's how it ends. Yeah. Democrats would have you believe that this is an act of insurrection. So exercising your First Amendment is insurrection. Start looking up the definitions of sedition and treason. Kind of close to that. A little bit. Edging into it. Definitely not supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. That's job one, and it's the first job that they've abrogated their responsibility to in hopes to enrich themselves. Nothing to see here, just the normal noises. Welcome to, regular government again, normalcy. Mm-hmm. So, um, what is stealing an election? By their estimation, I wonder if exercising your First Amendment is insurrection. I guess it depends on whether or not you get away with it. And right now, they think they've gotten away with it because they hold all the levers of power in government. What does that really mean? Well, it means that we've got a fight ahead of us. Anyway, but by the time any actual Trump supporters got to the Capitol, it was already over. And our Congress, led by the turncoat coward Mike Pence, was well into stabbing our president in the back by then. And the turncoats to our nation only needed a small excuse. It's curious how they got one, as if on cue. But the timing was off because Trump was late to the party. So you can think whatever you want to think. And I don't believe it would have been a terrible thing had Mike Pence chosen to send the competing slates of electors from the 6 states, and there were 2 sets. The certified results and that had come into question, and the state supplementally had said by their state legislature, as defined by the Constitution, alternative slates. He could have sent them back to their respective state legislatures for confirmation. Wouldn't have been a big deal. Just say, hey, you sent us 2. Which one is correct? But no, he didn't do that. And I wonder why not. I also wonder why Karen Pence got one of the mystery envelopes at George Bush Sr.'s funeral. There were only 5 given out, at least that we saw, and they were to the wives. I could see, Laura Bush and Jill Biden and Hillary Clinton and Mike Obama getting some sort of nasty gram. But I didn't get why Karen Pence got one. The folks that got those letters didn't seem terribly happy about what the contents were. But, that's a conspiracy tale for another day, I suppose. Maybe one day we'll find out what the hell that was all about. But today is all about the end of a number of things. The end of the Trump presidency. And more importantly, the end of the conspiracy theories put forward. He's got a plan. There's sealed indictments. 190,000 arrests are going to be made. Mike Obama and Barack have already been executed, and what you see are body doubles. That was one of my favorite ones. I went to a website and it had a listing of all these people that were actually, in Guantanamo or executed. And you either saw them as a factor of CG on television, or they had body doubles. And it's like, yeah, okay. But anyway, these theories are put forward by sad and simple people, hopeful nutcases that desperately needed to believe that we would all be saved, and saw signs, in the tea leaves or Q codes that gave them some small release of fear for what is to come. Sad. Or maybe they were put forward by bad actors seeking to prey upon the emotions of the weak of will and weak of mind, the uninformed, in hopes that they would be able to be manipulated into committing some form of catastrophic stupidity, which didn't happen. Patriots are not terrorists. And we are patriots. We are not terrorists. We are not going to take up arms against our government. Certainly, we have other options, which I think would be a hell of a lot more effective at this time. But worse, maybe they were being put forward by opportunists so that, you would click on their links and make them money. Hmm. There's a lot of that going on too. Um, but whatever the reason, it didn't happen. There was no um, fabulous, act of um, extrajudicial authority, no military tribunals. Hillary Clinton is not going to hang, which I'm kind of disappointed about that. You know, I'd like to have paid to get a seat in the room to watch that. Anyway, um, and I would have liked to have believed any number of these crazy stories because I love my country and because I fear for what harm is surely coming to my country and my countrymen. And I think most of us do, in fact, love our country. You know, we love America. Um, and when I think about uh, America, um, I think, well, who are we? You know, myself, I'm a software developer, pretty good one too. Um, what that means is that I am uh, extremely lazy. Anybody that writes software will tell you that if you're good at it, the reason that you got good at it is because you are too lazy to do the same repetitive thing over and over and over again. You'd rather write, some kind of little stub application to do it for you. Um, so yeah, but we're small business owners, we're union workers, we're retail clerks, we're gas station attendants, police officers, firemen and women, first responders, forklift drivers, construction workers, plumbers, cabbies, pastors, ministers, soccer moms, martial arts teachers, professionals of every stripe, and support workers of the same. We are America, united. We are America. We are not racial tribes engaged in an eternal systemic power struggle of oppressors versus the oppressed, and we never have been. Never. That's not. That's not who we are. So the question is this where we're headed? Is this where we're headed? Sure looks like that way. Um, our ideological opponents are working very hard to become our enemies. Um, and whatever happened to the winning side? It's like in a boxing ring after the fight is over, the victor goes over to the vanquished and congratulates them on a good fight, and they part, maybe not friends, but certainly not enemies. Hmm. But that's not what's going on now. No. Uh, we must be hunted down now because we're terrorists. Yeah. They're working very hard to become our enemies. And that's very dangerous. They've been running a playbook right out of 1933 Berlin, Germany. Yep. And I mentioned it earlier that I'd seen a BLM rioter, a face that I've seen in Andy No videos and other photos, Elijah Schaefer, guys that have boots on the ground during the riots that have been plaguing our nation and still are. Not a Trump supporter, definitely there. But he was running through the Capitol on the 6th, encouraging people to burn it down. Burn this shit down. We have to burn this shit down. That's what they wanted. They wanted to set the Capitol ablaze. 1933 Berlin, the Reichstag building, the analog of our Capitol dome, our Capitol building, was burned heavily. And it was direct, that event is directly tied to the rise of the Nazi Party. And historically, evidence now points to the fire not being started by some sweaty Dutch worker, but rather by the Nazi Party members itself to foment the revolution that they wanted. And think what would have happened if they started to burn the Capitol building. Look at the a colossal authoritarian response that we've seen from what, quite frankly, was a tempest in a teapot. Shouldn't have happened. It was stupid, and the people responsible for it are going to go to jail. Some for a very, very long time, you know. I hope they don't arrest the old granny with the flag. I think that would be ridiculous. You know, maybe make her do community service. You know, knit woods for pigeons or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you have to be held responsible for your actions. But when the police let you into the building, you're not breaking in. And if you're walking between the velvet ropes, you know, committing an act of tourism, not terrorism, then you're a tourist, not a terrorist. And that's the way that should be left. But think about it. Any of this seem eerily familiar? It better, if you know your history. And what are the dire warnings of imminent violence by the Trump terrorists that were supposed to occur in all 50 capitals? Maybe you saw the very interesting red and ochre posters, you know, with bold black lettering, which looked a hell of a lot more like communist posters, but it had an image of the Statue of Liberty in the bottom right corner, and it was a call to take back our nation. Yeah. In the first place, the right is not very good at making graphics, and if we were going to make them, it would have been in red, white, and blue, not communist red, black, and gold. And it wouldn't have looked like a Che Guevara, you know, yarn or wall hanging. Okay, it's like, come on, seriously? Yeah, nobody fell for that shit. But what if we had? Yeah, that would have been pretty bad. But anyway, why all the pro-Trump, the God Emperor, you know, rhetoric? Nothing happened. The Capitol didn't burn. There were not Trumpian riots. Antifa, oh yeah, you know, we're seeing Antifa riots. Yep. And like I said before, funny how suddenly they're not an imaginary group to the mainstream media and the lawmakers, because now the bill has come due. They did nothing. They praised it. Hell, Kamala Harris and many Democrats through Act Blue were bailing these people out. It was like a revolving door, you know. Now the birds come home to roost, kids. What are you going to do? Well, they're still calling it protests. They're going to burn. They're going to loot. And yes, they will murder. That's what BLM actually stands for, at least in my mind, because that's all I've seen from them. That and communist, you know, manifesto drivel dripping out of their mouths. You know, that doesn't sit well with more than 82% of the nation, because only about 12 to 18% of the nation is actually batshit crazy, you know, pushing all this. They just have loud voices and a lot of money. Yeah, well, we're not a plutocratic society, not yet, but some people seem to think so. They want a socialist economic model, but in order to push that, you need an authoritarian government. Yeah. And when you join government, billionaire industrialists and the mainstream media together to rule, what's that called? I'll give you a minute. Okay, time's up. If you said fascism, you get a gold star. Yeah, that's what fascism is. And you don't have to look too far back into history to see how that ended. No, we're not going to do that. There was no insurrection at the Capitol. Trump did not start an insurrection. or foment violence. We know that. More to the point, so do the lawmakers currently shocked and outraged by these terrible acts of violence. More likely, they're shocked and outraged that their calls for vengeance have no foundation and they look like the hypocrites that they clearly are. Nothing to see here, just the normal noises. So does the flag behind me represent our newly minted authoritarian regime? I think it's distinctly possible. But it does not represent America. In exactly the same way that Washington, D.C. does not represent me or my nation. This is America. This represents me. I pledge allegiance to this flag and that republic. And I say that the authoritarian fascists desperately grabbing at power in D.C. are damned. The election is over. America lost. But that only means that Americans have to fight for liberty against a tyrant again. We've done it before. We need to do it now. And God help us, we'll need to do it again in the future. So let's lay down a roadmap for the future. We're not going to take up arms. We're not going to, have bloody revolution. We're going to have confidence in the tools of statecraft, the actual tools, the Constitution. And they're going to try and twist it, and they're going to try to bend it, but it will not break. Have faith in that. There's some things that we can do, and I'm going to get into that in my next segment. But as a precursor, let me remind you that our state governments still belong to us. And the states have a tremendous amount of power and leverage and influence. Yeah. So trust in your state legislatures. And if you live in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Georgia or Nevada or Wisconsin or Arizona, and you know that your electoral process was compromised, then you need to pressure your state legislators to clean that up, to make absolutely sure the voter rolls are clean, to make sure that only legal voters can vote. And for that, you need voter ID. We need paper ballots, not machines that count fractional votes and miraculously and mysteriously drop edited vote counts. How does that happen? Never mind. We all know what we saw. So as far as I'm concerned, like was said against Trump, not my president? Fuck no. Unfortunately, I think that he's the CCP's president. And Kamala, oh my God. Kamala is just a whore. That's how she got into office. Yeah. There's a proud duo. So moms, let your little girls grow up to be sex workers, and one day they might be president. Yeah, not so good. Stand the hell by, Washington. The fascist Democrats and the rhino traders, that's not America. But America is readying a response to your crimes against her. And the Berlin DC wall is going to fall. Mark my words. We're in trouble, America. Not the first time. We got work to do. Not the first time. We will prevail. Not for the last time. God bless America. God bless her patriots. God bless us all.